And that's why you never ever pick up a hitchhiker. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original movie, the 1974 movie. See, I kind of figured I would talk about the original movie because I already talked about the new Netflix movie that just came out, a few months ago. So I thought to myself, might as well talk about the original movie, in which all of these sequels are claiming to be the actual sequel to the original movie. And in order to do that, that means this movie would have to be a classic, it has to be remembered, and it has to be one of the greatest horror movies ever made. And is it? Yeah, it is definitely one of the best horror movies out there, mostly because it doesn't rely on gore, it doesn't rely on jump scares. Well, there are a couple of jump scares because it is a slasher horror movie. But it is the slasher horror movie that kind of started the genre. I may have said down the road on my YouTube channel that Halloween was the one that started the slasher horror movie genre. Well, technically, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the first slasher horror movie out there. It was Halloween that mostly perfected it, if you catch my meaning. I mean, there are a couple of flaws in this movie, and I'll get to those in a minute. But before I get into this review, I would like to say, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and share this video as much as possible. Let's try and get my channel up to 1,000 views and get me monetized before the end of the year. Alright, back to the review. Anyway, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre starts off in a word scroll, and this guy is saying, the film you are about to see is based off of an event in which these 5 teens were on the road and they ended up in this nightmarish scenario, which today we call the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So basically doing that thing, saying that this is based on a true story, just like the Blair Witch Project did back in 1999, if that's the year where it came out. Yeah, I think it came out in 1999. And that is the first element that would say, wait a minute, is this really based on a true story? Is it based on a true story? Well, kinda. I say kinda because the actual story itself is definitely fictional. That all did not happen, but the character Leatherface is based off an actual serial killer that used to live in the United States. Yeah, that's enough to make your skin crawl. And not only did this one serial killer inspire Leatherface, he also inspired two other killers in movie history. One of them being Norman Bates from Psycho and Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. Yeah, try putting all of that in a nutshell. So basically you put all 3 of those characters together and make the actual story of this serial killer. You're just basically asking this entire audience to take therapy for the next 10 years of their lives. Yeah. But anyway, this movie starts off, you have these 5 teens, you have Kirk, Sue, Gary, Franklin, and Sally all on the road. I cannot believe I remembered all of their names. But they're on the road, and they see this guy walking on the side of the road, and they pick him up. They pick up a hitchhiker. And immediately I'm thinking, stranger danger, do not ever pick up a hitchhiker. And the first second you meet this guy, immediately the first red flag just walks across, because this guy clearly does not look sane. And as this scene progresses on, major red flags 2, 3, and 4 pass by, and I'm thinking, why is this guy still in your car? Kick him out already. I mean, at this point, you guys are just asking to die. Yeah, but after that whole scenario gets down, we start getting into who these characters actually are. What's really interesting is that Sally, who's supposed to be the main character, doesn't exactly get a little bigger until later on in the movie, which I think is actually a very clever thing, because it's leading to the idea that she may not be the sole survivor by the end of the movie. So I will say, to the movie's credit, that was pretty good. But the only other characteristics that I can really claim are big ones would be Franklin, Sally's brother, who is in a wheelchair, because they're passing by this slaughterhouse, and he's explaining how they kill cattle in there, which I understand that you find it fascinating, but I don't think your friends find it fascinating, dude, because they're all telling you to stop talking about it. And the only other characteristics that I can really say out of them all is Sue is when she's reading out of this little magazine, giving them their zodiac signs or whatever. In other words, they're basically the basic slasher horror movie teens that we all know about. Even their dialogue is funky as well. You can watch this movie and say, yep, that's slasher horror movie dialogue. Nothing special here. But the thing we all gotta remember, and what a lot of horror movie fans respect mostly about this movie is that back in 1974, this wasn't slasher horror movie dialogue. This was dialogue. This never happened before. So, in other words, this is something brand new that a lot of horror movie fans were not expecting at the time. I can guarantee you the only other horror movies that I can really think of would have to be The Exorcist that came out a year before. Yeah, a year before, or the same year. Yeah, the year before. And Psycho. Those were the movies that terrified people. I think the director of this movie wanted to go out of his way to see how far he can get away with a bunch of stuff. Because a bunch of things that this movie does really well is that it does have jump scares that do come out of nowhere and are scary, and not to mention it has that disturbing element. Like, for example, one of the characters falls into the living room of this place, and after looking around for a second, you see bones everywhere, and it takes you a minute to realize, those aren't animal bones. And then you see the couch that is made out of human bones, as well as decorations that are like skulls and arms, and you have this chicken in the background. It just does not look normal, and immediately it just brings out danger in this type of scene. So I will say to the design department, good job. That was brilliant to see. And the editing at that dinner table scene, that was good too. That was incredibly disturbing. However, there are the same slasher horror movie tropes that are in the movie that I do find kind of annoying. Like, for example, these teens are still stupid. You know how people do stupid things in horror movies? One of the characters is at the door of the house. He opens it up. He's trying to find gas, asking for help. And immediately I'm looking around going, dude, there's animal skulls on the wall. There's animal fur hanging around everywhere. And there's the sound of a pig in this back room over there. So I gotta ask the question, why the heck are you going in this house? I would just take one look around and go, you know what? I'm just gonna hike the next 5 miles to the next house. I mean, it's a long ways, but better than what this house looks like. And not to mention I gotta bring this up, this movie is probably one of the first ones where I can think it's hard to really trust anyone, because there is one point where one character feels like that they are safe at this gas station. They think they're safe. They think they're out of Leatherface's hands, because in our minds the only killer that we see throughout the entire movie is Leatherface, and that hitchhiker that they left behind a long time ago. So you think that they are in a safe place. But then the movie starts giving you a little elements saying, are you really safe? So I will say, just without the dialogue and just the camera works alone is enough to really put the story together. So I will congratulate the movie for that. Another thing that I gotta say that is kind of annoyance about this movie, granted, I know I'm talking a little bit too much smack about this movie, and I'm pretty sure I have a lot of people watching this going, how dare you talk bad things about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie? It is a masterpiece. Granted, it is, but there are some moments in this movie where I kind of find a little bit annoying, and this one would have to be, the movie is a little bit too short. I mean, it's about an hour and 23 minutes long, which is enough time to really bring out the horror and the disturbing elements that this movie is famous for, but it does not have enough time for me to really care about these teens. I mean, if I wanted to really be afraid for these teens' lives, if I really want to see them get out of this terrifying situation, I would like to know a little bit more about them. But the movie really cuts down big on that, and the only thing that I can really think about them is that they are a dick to Franklin half the time. So, yeah. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, and yes, it is one of the best horror movies out there. I mean, the first time I ever watched it, it was hard for me to sleep for a couple of hours. So, it did have that, you know, scared stiff moment where you kind of need a minute to get it out of your head so you can finally fall asleep again and maybe have a light or two on in your apartment or house. Yeah, I did have that, so I will give credit to that and give where credit's due. So this movie definitely is classic. So guys, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original movie, have you seen it? What did you think of it? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts, and if I missed anything, please comment that down below as well, and I'll see you in the next video.